Leonard Port ရဲ့ episode 16ကနေပြန်လည်ကြိုဆိုလိုက်ပါရရှင်။ပြီးခဲ့တဲ့ episode တွေမှာ U development နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှအကြောင်းအရာများစွာကို sharing လုပ်ပေးသွားပြီဆိုတော့ဒီကနေ့မှာတော့ကျောင်းသားလူငယ်တွေရဲ့အကြောင်းမှာကြုံတွေ့နေရတဲ့စိုးရိမ်ပူပန်မှုလေးတွေကိုဆွေးနွေးသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါရရှင်။ဒီမှန်းချက်ပန်းနိုင်ရောက်ဖို့စူးစမ်းနေတဲ့လူငယ်တဦးတစ်ယောက်ချင်းစီမှာအခက်အခဲကိုယ်စီရှိတာအားလုံးလည်းအသိပါ။ဒီနေ့စကားဝိုင်းလေးကိုတော့ပို့ပြီးတော့မှအသက်ဝင်သွားအောင်ကျောင်းသားတွေနဲ့အမြဲတမ်းထိတွေ့ပြီးတော့မှကူညီပေးနေတဲ့ teacher Sherry ကိုလည်းဖိတ်ခေါ်ထားပါတယ်ရှင်။ Teacher Sherry ကတော့ SISEC Admission Counselor မှာ University Admission Counselor အနေနဲ့တာဝန်ယူထားတဲ့သူတစ်ဦးဖြစ်ပါရဲ့ရှင်။ Colorado State University ကနေပြီးတော့မှ Business Management နဲ့ဘွဲ့ရရှိထားတဲ့သူတစ်ဦးဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ပြင်ပမှာရှိတဲ့ World Ranking ကောင်းတဲ့တက္ကသိုလ်တွေကိုတွားရောက်ပညာသင်ယူခြင်းနဲ့ကျောင်းသားတွေကို Scholarship Admission အသီးသီးရအောင်ကူညီပေးနေတဲ့သူလည်းဖြစ်ပါရဲ့ရှင်။တနည်းအားဖြင့်ပြောရမယ်ဆိုရင်တော့ကျောင်းသားတွေရဲ့ stress ကိုသိမြင်ကြုံတွေ့နေရတဲ့သူလည်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ Teacher ရေမင်္ဂလာပါရှင်။
မင်္ဂလာပါ
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ teacher အဆင်သင့်ဖြစ်ပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင် podcast လေးကိုစလိုက်ကြတော့မလားရှင်
Okay ready ပါ
ဆိုတော့ပထမအဆုံးမေးခွန်းလေးအနေနဲ့ပေါ့နော်ကျောင်းသားတွေရဲ့ပညာရေးမှာဘယ်လိုမျိုး risk လေးတွေကြုံတွေ့နေရှိကြလဲဆိုတော့အဲ့လိုຢာတွေကရောကျောင်းသားတွေကိုဘယ်လောက်ထိခိုက်စေနိုင်လဲရှင်
Okay so အင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပဲဖြစ်ပါလိမ့်မယ်နော် Alright so I think when people hear the word risk they typically think about like failing an exam or choosing a wrong major but actually there are so many different risks that students face some are academic or some could be because of poor study habits like falling or some could be because they're falling behind in classes or maybe they're struggling to understand like different subjects but some could be emotional like feeling stressed feeling anxious feeling burnt out or maybe they have low self-confidence but others could be social like bullying peer pressure unhealthy friendships or just feeling isolated in general but they're also risks related to the future. Many students worry about choosing the wrong major, like disappointing their families, not getting scholarships, not getting into a university, or not knowing what career path to pursue. And I think it's just important to remember that these challenges are normal and almost every student faces them at one point or the other. So, a lot of people assume that these challenges only affect a student's grade, but the impact is usually much bigger than that because when students are constantly stressed and overwhelmed, it can start affecting their concentration, their sleep, their energy levels, their motivation. I mean, they might sit down to study, but find it difficult to focus because they're thinking about like deadlines, exams, or everything that they still have left to do. Or sometimes, students might lose confidence in themselves even when they're, performing really well because they're so focused on what they haven't achieved yet that they can't see what they've already achieved or how far they've come. But on the other hand, some students become so overwhelmed that they start procrastinating. It's not necessarily because they're lazy, but sometimes they just feel that the workload is so large that they don't know where to start, so they just avoid it entirely. But over time, these pressures can affect their mental health, they can affect their friendships, relationship with family, friends, and even physical health. So some students might become irritable or they might withdraw from family and friends. They might experience headaches, sleep problems, or just feel, tired all the time. And that's why I think it's important to not ignore these warning signs because most challenges are easier to manage when they're addressed early before they build into something much bigger.
Yes, teacher. And not a question တကူပါပေါ့နော် academic stress ပေါ့နော်နောက်ဆုံးစာမေးပွဲကိုဖြေဆိုဖို့အတွက်ကိုစူးစမ်းနေတဲ့အချိန်မှာကလေးတွေကအရန်စိုးရင်ပူပန်ပြီးတော့မှ stress အရန်များကြရဲပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီလိုအချိန်မှာရောသူတို့လေးလုပ်လို့ရနိုင်တဲ့ stress ကို relief လုပ်ပေးနိုင်တဲ့နည်းလမ်းလေးတွေကိုမျှဝေပေးလို့ရမလားရှင်
Okay, so I think first it's important to accept that you've already done the best preparation that you reasonably could. I mean, the night before an exam, many students, I mean, including myself when I was a student, spend those final hours focusing on everything that they don't know. Like, oh, what if they ask me this? I didn't go over this. But and then you convince yourself that you haven't prepared enough. But I mean, at that point, stressing doesn't improve your score. It just drains your energy, your confidence. So, trust in the effort that you've already put in. And sometimes also we think that exam preparation is just purely academic, but your physical well-being can also affect your mental performance, right? So what I want to emphasize is sleep. I mean, a well-rested brain performs much better than a really tired one. I know some students, they feel tempted to, stay up all night, revising, but I mean, in many cases, pulling an all-nighter actually makes it harder to concentrate, harder to recall information, and even like think clearly during the exam. So it's important to take care of yourself physically as well. Have a light breakfast. Don't skip breakfast, especially I mean, if you're feeling hungry, your brain is not going to be able to focus on the exam. It's going to be thinking about how hungry you are. So, have a light breakfast, like stay hydrated, also so that you can give your body the fuel that it needs. And finally, remind yourself that an exam is important, but I mean, it doesn't define everything. It's just an assessment of your knowledge on a particular day. It doesn't necessarily define everything else.
နောက်ထပ်မေးခွန်းလေးတစ်ခုပါပေါ့နော်စာလုပ်တဲ့အခါမှာဘယ်လိုမျိုး tips လေးတွေနဲ့ကြာကြာမှတ်မိအောင်နားလည်ရအောင်လုပ်တင်လဲရှင်
Okay. So I think when it comes to memorizing, there isn't necessarily like one study method that, works for everyone. Some people, they learn best by like looking at photos, watching videos, while others learn by, listening, discussing, or just repeating information. But for me personally, I have always learned best and memorized things better when I wrote things down. Like if I've taken notes on something or if I've rewritten it in my own words, I'm much more likely to remember it. And sometimes I have a photographic memory. I don't know why it's not all the time. It's only sometimes I remember certain diagrams better. So for everyone, it's different. But I think for subjects that require like a lot of memorization, maybe like biology, I find like flashcards really helpful. So tools like, for example, Quizlet are great because they kind of force you to recall information instead of just rereading your notes over and over. That's what I used when I was in high school. That was years ago, so I don't know if kids are still using it now. But Quizlet was really helpful for me. Back then, it was free too, but now I think there will probably be ads. So that's one thing I'll use. And another thing is if I'm really struggling to understand like a really heavy topic, what I will do is I'll go to AI, like I'll use AI and then I'll ask AI to explain that topic as if I were a child. So AI breaks down that topic into smaller sections and it makes it easier for me to understand. So I think that's a really good trick if you are trying to break down a topic, and then you're struggling. And another thing also is pretending like you're teaching that concept to someone. So if you can explain something clearly, if you can make them understand, and if you think, okay, how do I explain this so that the other person understand? It kind of helps you break it down into different sections. And once you're able to, explain that clearly to someone, it shows that you understand it rather than just simply memorizing it. So those are just some of the things that have helped me and that I hope will help students as well.
Okay ဆိုလို့ရှိရင် teacher ကဒီ flash cards လေးတွေသုံးတာလေးသဘောကျတယ် Quizlet လေးတွေလည်းသုံးစီခြင်းတယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးလို့ရှိရင်ဒီdiagram လေးတွေဆွဲရ technique ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းညီမအခုသုံးနေတာပေါ့နော်တခါလေးကြာလို့ရှိရင်အခန်းထဲမှာ teaching technique နဲ့ကိုယ့်ကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မပြောတဲ့အချိန်မှာဘေးကလူရတော့မှအယူလိုမျိုးထင်တာမျိုးတော့ရှိရပေါ့နော် so ဒါပေမဲ့ it's very helpful ပါ so အရန်ကိုကောင်းတဲ့ technique တွေပါရှင် okay ဆိုတော့နောက်ထပ်မေးခွန်းလေးတစ်ခုကိုတွားလိုက်ကြတော့မလားရှင်နောက်ထပ်မေးခွန်းလေးကကြတော့ပေါ့နော်ဒီစာမွေးဖြေခါနေမှာပေါ့နော်ကိုကိုဘယ်လိုမျိုးတေချာလေးစောင့်ရှောက်တင်လဲရှင်ကိုကိုဘယ်လိုမျိုးချစ်ပေးတင်လဲပေါ့နော်ဟုတ်
Okay, So I think this is kind of similar to the other question that we talked about earlier. So what I think students focus on so much is like they prepare for the exam that they forgot to prepare themselves for the exam. Like physically, it means like getting enough sleep, eating properly and staying hydrated and not, like relying too much on caffeine or like energy drinks. I mean, you want to go into an exam room, feeling refreshed and like alert, not, exhausted and like running on stress. And mentally as well, I think it's important to focus on what you can control. I mean, you can't control how difficult the questions are going to be or how other students will do better. But I mean, what you can control is how much you prepare or how much you have prepared, the effort that you've put in, and the mindset that you bring into the exam room. So I mean, it's typical, a lot of students, they spend days before an exam, like imagining the worst case scenario, like what if I fail? What if I can't get into this university? They stress about things that haven't even happened, and most of the time they spent more time stressing than actually studying. So learning, how to manage that pressure, it's also a skill in itself. I mean, the goal isn't to eliminate the stress completely. I mean, you have to be stressed because this is an exam, but feeling a little nervous is normal. So, what I want to emphasize is the goal is not to let that stress, not to let that anxiety become like so loud that it distracts you from doing the best that you can. So um, just to recap, how to take care of yourself is, prepare yourself physically, mentally, and just understand that it's okay to feel nervous. Just don't let that nervousness get the best of you.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီ exam ကနီးလာတဲ့နေရာပေါ့နော်တော်တော်များများ stress အရင်ပြီးကြရပေါ့နော်တချို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ညလုံးပေါက်စားလုပ်တာမျိုးတွေလည်းရှိရပေါ့နော်ညီမပါဝင်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ညလုံးပေါက်စားဝင်ပြီးစားလုပ်ပြီးတော့မှရှိသမျှဟာတွေအကုန်လုံးထည့်ရတာမျိုးလည်းရှိရပေါ့နော် caffeine အများကြီးတောက်တာမျိုးတွေပြီးတော့ဒီတဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့ဆောင်းမွေးနီးလာတဲ့အချိန်မှာ dark cycle အကြီးရလာတာမျိုးမျက်လုံးအောက်မှာကြီးလာပြီးတော့ panda ဖြစ်လာတာမျိုးတွေပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးလေးရှိရဲဆိုတော့ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းဒီဆောင်းမွေးနီးလာတာနဲ့အမျှအိတ်ချိန်လည်းမှန်အောင်လုပ်ရမယ် mental ဘိုင်းလည်းတခြားလေးပြင်ဆင်ရမယ်ပေါ့နော်ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဆိုတော့နောက်တစ်မိကွန်းလေးကကြတော့ဒီ scholarship ပေါ့နော် scholarship လျှောက်ဖို့ပြင်ဆင်နေတဲ့သူတွေရှိရပေါ့နော်ဆို scholarship လျှောက်ဖို့ပြင်နေတဲ့ကလေးတွေမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းသူတို့မှာလည်းဘယ်လိုမျိုး risk လေးရှိလဲဆိုတော့ career ရွေးတဲ့အချိန်မှာမတေးကြနေတာမျိုးလေးပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့မှာစိုးရိမ်တာမျိုးလေးဆိုတော့ညီမကိုယ်တိုင်လည်းအဲ့လိုမျိုးတွေမပါခဲ့ဘူးရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီလိုကလေးတွေအတွက်ကိုရော teacher အနေနဲ့ဘယ်လိုမျိုးအကြံဉာဏ်လေးပေးချင်ပါတယ်ရှင်
Okay. So I think this is something that I see quite often working with students. This has come up a lot as well. I mean, we did a whole Unilearn did a whole boot camp about it the other week. So I think sometimes students become, interested in a specific major because there's a scholarship available for it. And I mean, honestly, for families that are facing financial constraints, it's a very understandable consideration. But I always encourage students to look, beyond the scholarship and ask, like, can I genuinely see myself studying the subject for the next few years? Because I mean, you're going to be studying 3-4 years, and I think even more importantly, can I see myself working in this field afterwards? I mean, a scholarship can certainly help open a door, but you're still the one that has to, walk through it. You're the one attending the classes, you're the one completing the assignments, and eventually you're building skills in that area. But at the same time, students shouldn't feel like they're making a life or death decision. I mean, careers today, I've learned as I started working, is that they're incredibly flexible. I mean, many people work in fields that are different from what they originally studied. I mean, I studied business management, but now I'm also counseling. I'm also in education, so that's one. I mean, I think students also put a a lot of pressure on themselves to have like their entire future figured out by 17, 18. I mean, very few people, very few students have their life figured out by then. So, I mean, while your major is an important decision, because yeah, it influences like your starting point, but it does not lock you into one career forever. One major doesn't mean that you'll only end up with one career. It's very flexible. So just focus on, making the best decision you can with the information that you have today, rather than, trying to predict like the next 40 years of your life.
อืม yes ဖြစ်ရင်တော့ဒီ career ရွေးချယ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာတော့အနေငယ်များပေါ့နော်စိုးရိမ်မှုတွေကြုံကြတာတဘာဝပါပဲဒါပေမဲ့လည်းကိုကဒီအဲ့ဒီရဲ့ major နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှ၄နှစ်3နှစ်လောက်ထိကိုအဲ့ဟာနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးအချိန်ကုန်ဆုံးအောင်ဖြစ်ရကြောင်းမလို့ငါဒီဟာကို၄နှစ်စာလောက်တင်ယူနေလဲဆိုပြီးတော့မှကိုယ့်ကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မှတွေးကြည့်တာမျိုးဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှင်လေဒီရဲ့ဒီ career ဘိုင်းကိုတွားမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှင်အလုပ်လုပ်တဲ့ခါမှာဆိုလို့ရှင်ရောငါနဲ့အဆင်ပြေပါမလားဆိုပြီးတော့မှကိုယ့်ကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မှမေးကြည့်တာမျိုးပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုမျိုးလေးလုပ်တင်နေပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့တကယ်လို့ကိုကcareer ပေါ့နော် major ရွေးမှသွားခဲ့တဲ့ရှိရင်တောင်မှအဲ့ဒီရဲ့ major နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှကိုလုပ်လို့ရတဲ့အရာတွေကိုစူးစမ်းပြီးတော့မှရှောက်ဖွေးကြည့်တင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒီ major ကိုယူထားလို့ဒီလုပ်ပဲလုပ်အောင်မယ်ဆိုတာမျိုးမဟုတ်ပဲねဒီအလုပ်နဲ့ဆက်ဆက်တဲ့ဒီ major နဲ့ဆက်ဆက်တဲ့တခြားအလုပ်တွေကိုလည်းကိုကပြန်ပြီးတော့မှ explore လုပ်လို့ရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကဲဆိုတော့ဒါလေးတစ်ချက်ပြပြသွားတာပါကဲပါဆိုတော့နောက်ထပ်မေးခွန်းလေးပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒါကကြတော့ကျောင်းသားတော်များမှလည်းကြုံရတယ်ပေါ့နော် time management မကောင်းတာ time management မကောင်းတဲ့ခါကျတော့အများကြီးကြုံရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ procrastinate လုပ်တာမျိုးတွေပါပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီမှာတွေ့ရှင်
Okay. So I mean, people often think that like time management is, squeezing as many tasks as you can into like a single day. But for me, it's more about like it's the opposite, because I feel like good time management is about, creating a system that works for you. It's for me, it's something that allows me to, get things done, be productive, but also um gives me time to relax and unwind. So the first step for me is prioritization, because not every task has the same level of importance or require the same level of energy or have the same level of urgency. So I think it's important to identify like what truly needs your attention first, and maybe also what takes the longest time to complete. Something that also has completely changed the way that I manage my time is Google Calendar. So I don't just use it for like work or school. I put everything in there. I put meeting. I have our podcast today in my calendar. Student consultations, deadlines, appointments. I have nail appointments in my calendar. Dinner with friends. And even like personal errands, like, oh, okay, I need to renew my Spotify subscription. It's in my calendar. If it's worth noting, it goes in my calendar. I need to order cake for a birthday. It's in my calendar. So, that way I'm not like constantly trying to remember like everything in my head. Actually, let me show you. This is my calendar for, I don't know if you can see it. This is my calendar for this month.
yes
So it's actually like very helpful. I started like using this recently, actually not recently, since I was in university, because it helps me plan everything better. But another habit that also helps me is writing things down the moment that they come to mind. If I suddenly remember something that I need to do, I would immediately like write it down and put it in my notes on my calendar, because otherwise there's a very good chance that I'm gonna forget later. I get distracted like very easily. So there's a very good chance that I'm gonna forget it later. But there's this LinkedIn course that I remember taking in university. It's this course called Time Management fundamentals. It's on LinkedIn Learning. It's Time Management Fundamentals by 𝐷𝐢𝐬 So he talks about this idea of doing like a brain dump. So what it is you take all the tasks, like all the reminders, and all the thoughts like that's floating around in your head, you put them onto paper. So I found that like incredibly like useful because sometimes, I mean, we're not stressed by the amount of work that we have. We're stressed by trying to mentally keep track of everything, you know? So once everything is written down, it becomes so much easier to organize, to prioritize, and, you know, actually get started. So my advice would be to build a system that works best for you.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့တစ်ချက်နဲ့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင် Google Calendar သုံးတာလေးကိုrecommend ပေးရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ကိုလုပ်ရမယ့်အလုပ်တွေအကုန်လုံးကို Google Calendar မှာထည့်ထားတဲ့ခါကျလို့ရှိရင်လည်းမမေ့တော့ဘူးပေါ့နော်အဲ့အပြင်ကိုဘယ်အရာပို့ပြီးတော့မှအရေးကြီးလဲဘယ်အရာဦးစားပေးပြီးတော့မှလုပ်တင်လဲဘယ်အရာအချိန်ကြာဆုံးဖြစ်မလဲခက်ခဲဆုံးဖြစ်မလဲဆိုတော့ဒီဟာလေးတွေကိုကြည့်ပြီးတော့မှဘယ်ဦးစားပေးလုပ်ရမယ်လုပ်နောက်မှလုပ်ရမယ်လို့ဆိုပြီးတော့မှခွဲခြားထားတင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးတော့နောက်တစ်ခုအနေနဲ့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကြတော့ဒီ multitasking အဲ့လိုမျိုးအလုပ်တွေကိုစုပြုံလိုက်တခါရဲလောက်တာကကြတော့ဒီအချိန်သက်သာစေမယ်လို့လူတွေကထင်ကြရဲပေါ့နော်တကယ်ကြတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးမဟုတ်ပါဘူးဆိုတော့ကိုတကယ်အရေးကြီးတဲ့အလုပ်ကိုလုပ်ပြီးတော့မှ step by step တခြားလုပ်သွားတာပို့ပြီးတော့မှလည်းorganize ဖြစ်တယ်မြန်လည်းပြီးတယ်စီစဉ်လည်းကြားရဲပေါ့နော်ဒါတစ်ချက်ပြောသွားတာလေးတွေပါရှင့်ကဲပါဆိုတော့နောက်ထပ်မိကွန်းလေးကိုသွားလိုက်ကြတော့မယ်ပေါ့နော်နောက်တစ်ခုကကြတော့ဒီလူငယ်တော်များမှာကြုံတွေ့နေရတဲ့အရာပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ကိုပုံမှန်တိုင်းလေးပဲ step by step ပေါ့နော်သွားနေတဲ့အချိန်မှာဘေးလူကိုကြည့်ပြီးတော့မှကိုနှေးနေတယ်လို့ခံစားရတဲ့ stress မျိုးလေးရှိရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒါလေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ရောဘယ်လိုမြင်ပါလဲရှင်ဟုတ်
Okay. I mean, I think this is something that almost everyone experiences at some point. I mean, it's natural to, you know, look around and feel like someone else is doing much better than you. Maybe they have like higher grades, maybe they have more achievements, more awards, or they seem like they have everything figured out. Maybe even their major. But comparison is often misleading because you are comparing like your whole reality, like everything that you know about yourself, to someone that chooses what they want to show. So, you know, you might see their achievements, you might see what they're doing well, but you don't always necessarily see their struggles or their setbacks or, you know, the support that they have or the years of effort that have maybe like gotten them there. And I think everyone start from different circumstances and they move through life at a different pace. And that's why I think a better question to ask is how far they've come because they're so focused on like someone else's success. They don't really see how far they've come themselves as well. So maybe a better question is to ask is not to ask like, oh, why is this person ahead of me, but to ask, am I making progress compared to the person that I was 6 months ago? I mean, the best comparison is usually with your past self, not with other people, because you know, success is not always being about better than someone else. Sometimes it's also about becoming like the best possible version of yourself.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီတယောက်နဲ့တယောက်ပေါ့နော်နှိုင်းရှင်တာမျိုးလေးရှိရပေါ့နော်ကိုယ့်ရဲ့ success နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှခြားသူကကိုယ့်ထပ်ပို့ပြီးတော့မှတာဝါတာလားပါလားဆိုပြီးတော့မှတွေးမိရမျိုးလေးရှိကြတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးတိုက်ပြီးတော့မှနှိုင်းရှင်နေမဲ့စားပေါ့နော်ကိုအခုလက်ရှိနေတဲ့ကိုနဲ့ဒီအရင်ကကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မှနှိုင်းရှင်ကြည့်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ပြီးတော့ဒီ social media ဆိုတာကလည်းလူတွေကကိုယ့်ရဲ့ကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကိုတိုးတက်လာတဲ့အရာတွေကိုယ့်ရဲ့ကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကိုပဲချပြရနေရဖြစ်တဲ့ကြောင့်မလို့တခြားသူစီမှာလည်းဘယ်လိုခက်ခဲကြုံနေရတယ်ဆိုတာလည်းကိုမသိနိုင်ဘူးဆိုတော့ဒါလေးကကြတော့ကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မှကိုပဲပြန်ပြီးတော့ compare လုပ်ပါလို့ဒီချက်ကပြောသွားတာပါရှင်ကဲပါအရန်ကိုကောင်းတဲ့ message လေးပါရှင်ဆိုတော့နောက်တစ်ခုအနေနဲ့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ဒီmental ဘိုင်းမှာပေါ့အရန်ပင်ပန်းပြီးတော့မှထိခိုက်နေတဲ့အကြောင်းသားတယောက်ရှိမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူ့ကိုဘေးလူတွေကဘယ်လိုမျိုးကူညီလို့ရနိုင်လဲရှင်
Okay. So I think something that's very simple but very meaningful is just reaching out. I mean, sometimes like we underestimate actually how hard it is for someone that is struggling to, ask for help. When people become mentally exhausted, when they become tired, they don't openly say, I'm struggling, I'm stressed. I mean, instead they withdraw from their activities. They become quieter, they stop replying to messages, or they just isolate themselves completely. But sometimes friends can interpret that as rejection, and as if, oh, okay, maybe this person might not want to be friends with me anymore. But it's normally just a sign that maybe your friend is feeling overwhelmed. I mean, try not to assume that they want to be left alone because they're becoming distant. I mean, if you notice someone that is becoming unusually quiet, or maybe they're missing activities, they don't really do as much as they used to, or maybe they're distancing themselves from others, like please check in on them. Sometimes just a simple message that says, hey, like I noticed you've been quiet lately. How are you doing? That can mean a lot to them, because I mean, you don't necessarily need to solve all their problems. You don't need to be their therapist, but sometimes people they just need to know that, okay, there's someone that cares enough to ask like how they're doing.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီ mental ဘာအရင်ပင်ပန်းနေတဲ့ကိုယ့်ရဲ့တငယ်ချင်းကိုမိသားစုဝင်ကိုယ့်ဘဝင်ချင်းမှာတစ်စုံတစ်ယောက်ရှိရဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ဒီဖြည့်ရှင်းမှုစူးစမ်းတာထက်ပေါ့နော်သူတို့ဘာဖြစ်နေလဲဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုအရင်သွားပြီးတော့မှမေးမြန်းပေးတာမျိုးလေးတွေလုပ်ဆိုတော့သူတို့ကသူတို့မှာလည်းmental ဘိုင်း problem ရှိနေတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဟိုသူတို့ကဒီ communicate လုပ်တာမျိုး interact လုပ်တာမျိုးမလုပ်ဘဲနဲ့ဒီတယောက်တည်းနေတာမျိုးလေးလည်းရှိရဲပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုအချိန်မှာသူတို့ကိုဖယ်ချင်မထားဘဲနဲ့ပေါ့နော်သူဘာဖြစ်နေတာလဲဆိုတဲ့ဟာလေးကိုသွားပြီးတော့မှမေးကြည့်ပေးတင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့တခါကြလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့ကဖြည့်ရှင်းပေးတာထက်သူတို့ခံစားနေရတဲ့ပြဿနာတွေကိုနားထောင်ပေးတာမျိုးပဲလိုချင်တာမျိုးလည်းရှိရဲပေါ့နော်ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီချက်ပြောသွားတဲ့ဟာလေးကအရင်ကိုကောင်းပါရဲ့ရှင်ကဲပါဆိုတော့နောက်တစ်ခုကကြတော့သူ့ကိုယ်သူရောပေါ့နော်သူ့ကိုယ်သူရောဒီဟာကိုသတိထားမိတဲ့အချိန်မှာဘာတွေစပြီးတော့မှလှုပ်ဆောင်တင်လဲပေါ့နော်ဟုတ်
Okay. So for people that know the MBTI, I'm an INTJ, so I'm a very analytical person. Like, so whenever I feel stressed or whenever I feel like overwhelmed, I start by like identifying the source of the stress, like what's stressing me out. I mean, not all the stress is the same. I try to like identify like what is stressing me out, and then I separate it into two categories. So the first one is things that I can control, and the second one is things that I can't control. So if it's something that I can control, then I'll do everything that I can. I'll create a plan, and I'll take action so that I can remove that stress. But if it's something that's outside of my control, I just remind myself that, okay, worrying about this is not going to change anything, because because regardless of what I do, it's not gonna change, So the only thing is just me thinking about it, me stressing about it. It's only going to drain my energy. And then additionally, like instead of thinking like, oh, okay, I have too much work, I think about like, okay, what is the next task that I can complete like within the next hour? So it just helps me like gain like a sense of direction. It helps me, it goes back to like prioritizing. It helps me like prioritize things. So when I feel stuck, this is what I do. And I realize that sometimes also like a lot of mental exhaustion comes from like not like the problems itself, but like that loop of like continuous like overthinking, that self pressure, and just like feeling really overwhelmed with everything. So sometimes also like learning to separate your action from worrying, and then also like knowing when to pause instead of pushing through, is also like, it has also become one of the most important skills for me, because it has helped me manage my own mental well-being. So I guess really also going back to differentiating between things you can control and things you can't control, because once you can differentiate that, you realize how much of the things that you're stressing about um actually like are actually things that you can't control. So which is why I think it's important to differentiate that. But that doesn't mean like, ignoring your emotions completely, because it's always important to know how you're feeling, to be in check with yourself. But it's simply just knowing when to I guess feel stressed, and then knowing when not to overthink.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီmental ပိုင်းအရင်ပြင်ပတဲ့အခါမှာပေါ့နော်များသောအားဖြင့်ကကျတော့ overthinking လုပ်တာမျိုးတွေပြီးတော့ကို control လုပ်လို့မရတဲ့အရာတွေပေါ်မှာအရင် focus လုပ်တာမျိုးတွေကနေပြီးတော့မှလာလေးရှိကြရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီကျောင်းသားတွေအနေနဲ့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကို control လုပ်လို့ရတဲ့အရာနဲ့ကို control လုပ်လို့မရတဲ့အရာကိုတခြားလေးခွဲခြားတင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ကို control လုပ်လို့မရတဲ့အရာတွေပေါ်မှာအရင် stress သွားထားလိုက်မိရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒါကိုယ့်ပုံမှာပြန်ပြီးတော့မှ effect တက်ရောက်မှုရှိရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ကို control လုပ်လို့ရတဲ့အရာတွေကို control လုပ်မယ်ပြီးတော့ဒီကို overthink ဖြစ်နေတဲ့အရာတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းတခြားလေးကိုယ်စိတ်ကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့မှ remind လုပ်ပြီးတော့မှဖြေလျှော့မယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ပို့ပြီးတော့မှကောင်းလာနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဟုတ်ပါဆိုတော့နောက်တစ်ခုကကျတော့ communication ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီမတူညီတဲ့နေရာကနေလာတဲ့ကျောင်းသားတွေကအချင်းချင်းတွေ့ကြတဲ့အခါမှာ communicate လုပ်ဖို့ခက်ခဲတာမျိုးလည်းရှိရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့communicate လုပ်ဖို့ခက်ခဲတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မလို့ချို့ကျောင်းသားတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင် isolated ဖြစ်သွားတဲ့သူတွေလည်းရှိကြရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီလိုမျိုးကျောင်းသားတွေအတွက်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဘယ်လိုရာလေးတွေကိုသတိထားပြီးတော့မှ friendship ကိုတည်ဆောက်တယ်လဲရှင်
Okay. So I learned a lot. I learned so many things while studying abroad. But I think this one is especially helpful for this question. So while studying abroad and also like while working with students from different backgrounds, is that sometimes people often like misunderstand what is different from them. So I noticed this during like group projects back in high school as well. Sometimes, I mean, there's always a student that doesn't speak that much, someone that's very shy. So they often like gradually become isolated, because most of the time, students assume that they're just rude or they're not interested, but that's not always the case. Maybe they're just shy, or maybe they were introverted and they're unsure how to start the conversation. So if you notice someone like that, don't always wait for them to make the first move. You can ask for their opinion, maybe in a group discussion. You can invite them into a conversation, or you can even like sit with them during classes, during breaks, because just including them, even just including them a little bit over time can make a big difference for them and their self-confidence as well. And I think also when you're building like friendships across different backgrounds, it's also important to be intentional as in like you check in on people that are quieter, or you're more patient, or you need to be more patient with someone that kind of just takes time to open up, or that to express themselves, and not always assuming things. Some people just might need like a little bit of space and or reassurance to open up. And I think it's also important to keep an open mind when you meet people from different backgrounds, because like their cultures, their upbringing, their beliefs, their communication style even can be like very different from yours. When you meet people from different cultures, backgrounds, personalities, one thing I would always say is try to understand them before you judge them, because sometimes your assumptions are what becomes stereotypes, and that those stereotypes are what oftentimes stops you from approaching them, or like from doing something. So always try and keep an open mind, always try to understand instead of misinterpreting them, or assuming things.
Okay. ဆိုတော့ဒီ communicate လုပ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာပေါ့နော်သူကကျောင်းသားတွေကလည်းမတူညီတဲ့နေရာကနေလာတယ်မတူညီတဲ့ background နေလာတဲ့အချိန်မှာ သူတို့တယောက်နဲ့တယောက် interact လုပ်တဲ့ပုံစံတွေလည်းမတူကြဘူးဆိုတော့တကယ်လို့ကိုကတကယ် friendship ကိုတည်ဆောက်ချင်တဲ့သူဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပထမဆုံးအနေနဲ့ open minded ဖြစ်ဖို့လိုတယ်နောက်တစ်ခုကကျတော့ကိုကသူများလာပြီးတော့မှ approach မလုပ်ရင်တော့ကိုကတော့ပြီးတော့မှ approach လုပ်ပေါ့နော်သူကငါ့ကိုခင်ချင်မှမလားသူကငါ့ကိုစကားပြောချင်တာလားမသိဘူးဆိုပြီးတော့မှကိုအရင်ဆုံးမတွေးပဲနဲ့အရင်ဆုံးသွားပြီးတော့မှချင်းကက်ကြည့်ပေါ့နော်ချင်းကက်ကြည့်ပြီးတော့မှစကားတွေပြောကြည့်group activities တွေမှာပါကြည့်တဲ့ခါကြလို့ရှိရင်ဆိုရင်လည်းပြပြနဲ့ friendship ကိုအဲ့လိုမျိုးတိဆောက်သွားလို့ရပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီတစ်ချက် sharing လုပ်ပေးသွားတာတွေပါဆိုတော့နောက်တစ်ခုကကျတော့ bully လုပ်တာပေါ့နော်အနိုင်ကျင့်တာပေါ့ဆိုတော့ bully လုပ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာလည်း verbally လား physically လားအမျိုးရှိတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒီချက်နဲ့ဒီကြောင်းအရာတွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ရောဘယ်လိုမျိုးမြင်လဲတကယ်လို့တစုံတစ်ယောက်ပေါ့နော်ကျောင်းသားတစ်ယောက်ကဒီ bully လုပ်တာကိုကြုံခဲ့ရတယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ရောဘယ်လိုမျိုးဖြေရှင်းသင့်လဲရှင်
Okay. So, I mean, bullying is something that I feel strongly about because no form of it is acceptable, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, or online. I mean, bullying can have serious, long-lasting effects on a person's confidence and their well-being. I mean, we all know the latest drama that came out about like bullying. I think it really goes to show that these are serious issues. These still are serious issues, even if it's not always talked about. But also sometimes like bullying doesn't always feel like obvious when it first happens because maybe it can be just like small comments, but it's just repeated over and over, or it could be like jokes about someone, or it could be like being left out. But over time, those moments really add up, and the person that's receiving it, they start to think that the problem is them. Instead of thinking or recognizing that this behavior is unfair, they think that they're the problem. But one thing that I also want students to understand is that bullying it's not a reflection of their worth. I mean, most of the time it has more to do with it says more about the bully's behavior than it does about the person that's being targeted. I mean, sometimes a lot of students are targeted simply because like they stand out, in some way, or they're different, but that difference shouldn't be treated as something that's negative. And also sometimes I think people like underestimated the role of bystanders. I mean, they call this like the bystander effect, because I mean sometimes you don't always need like a big confrontation. Even small things like not laughing or not like passing on a comment or just checking in on someone who's left out can shift the situation. I mean, at the end of the day, I think every student deserves to feel respected. They deserve to feel safe. They deserve to feel accepted and loved for who they are.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ bully လုပ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာလည်းအမျိုးမျိုးရှိရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဘာလို့ bully လုပ်တာလဲဆိုတာလည်းအကြောင်းရင်းမျိုးရှိကြရပေါ့နော် maybe ကိုကတခြားသူနဲ့ difference ဖြစ်နေရလားကိုကဒီ maybe stand out သူများထပ်ပို့ပြီးတော့မှထင်ပေါ်နေရလားပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးရှိကြတယ်ဆိုတော့bully လုပ်ခံရတဲ့သူအနေနဲ့စဉ်းစားရမှာကြတော့ကိုကငါးကြောင့်မလို့ငါ bully ငါကြောင့်မလို့ငါအနိုင်ကျင့်ခံနေရတာဘာလားလို့မတွေးပဲနဲ့ဒါကဒီ bully လုပ်နေတဲ့သူရဲ့ action တွေနဲ့လည်းစပြီးတော့မှတွေးတင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်။ဒါပါဆိုတော့တကယ်လို့ကိုကလည်းဒီအဲ့ဒီတိုင်းမှာရှိနေရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းကိုတခြားတယောက်ရဲ့အဲ့လိုစိတ်ခံစားချက်ကိုမထိခိုက်မိအောင်အတတ်နိုင်ဆုံးကြိုးစားတင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်။ကဲပါဆိုတော့နောက်ထပ်တစ်ခုကကြတော့ပေါ့နော် cyber bullying cyber bullying နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ရောဘယ်လိုမျိုး handle လုပ်တင်လဲရှင်။ဘာလို့ဆိုတော့ဒီဟာကြီးကအများခဏကြုံနေရတဲ့အရာလည်းဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးတော့ဒီဟာကိုကြုံတဲ့ကလေးတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းဖြည့်ရှင်းဖို့ထပ်ပေါ့နော်လက်လျှော့ပို့ပြီးတော့မှစဉ်းစားကြတာမျိုးရှိရယ်ဆိုတော့တကယ်လို့ဒီစုံတယောက်ကအဲ့လိုမျိုးကြုံနေရတယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီချက်အနေနဲ့ရောဘယ်လိုမျိုးအားပေးစကားလေးပြောချင်ပါတယ်ရှင်
Okay. So I think something that makes cyberbullying especially like dangerous today is that it follows the student home. Like in the past, at least, I think there was some separation between like school and home. But now, like even when you're at home, you can get a message, you can get a post, even when you're not like looking at it, like it's still there. So if someone is going through cyberbullying, I would say the first step is not to try and solve it yourself, because when you respond, it usually gives it more attention. And um, so I think the first thing that you should do is, block the person, report the account. And third, also save evidence, like take screenshots, so if necessary, if you need it so that you can always use it, like take screenshots and, most importantly, like tell like trusted adults, because the goal of this is to remove their access to you. So, um, and another thing that's also important is like don't keep, rereading messages or checking their profile repeatedly. I mean, that is very common. Like I mean, I think everyone would do the same, but it keeps you doing that, it keeps you mentally stuck in a situation where even though like nothing new is happening. And if it starts to feel like overwhelming or hopeless, I mean, I think that's usually the point where you should know that this shouldn't be handled alone. Talk to someone, like please talk to someone, talk to a parent, talk to your teacher, or talk to friends, that because they can help you overcome this. And most of the time, I think parents, I mean, our parents are people that are always going to be there for us. There are people that can help you, especially help you in this situation as well. I mean, if you're scared, if you're worried about telling your teachers or your teachers directly, you have your parents, tell them, because they are your trusted adults, and they can help you. And if you know, and if especially if you know who that person is, then all the more reason to, tell your parents so that they can talk to the school. And sometimes I know it sounds like easier to say it rather than actually doing it, but the thing is, please reach out. Like, don't go through this alone. And one thing that I want to remind students as well is like, not every opinion deserves your attention, or your time, or your energy, because people that leave hurtful comments online, I mean, they don't see your full life. Maybe they don't know who you are. Sometimes there are trolls on the internet that just like to bully people. So their input, how they see you, what they say about you, shouldn't carry more weight than the people that, actually know you. And if you know someone that is experiencing cyberbullying, or if you yourself are experiencing cyberbullying, like please talk to someone immediately. You don't have to carry that burden alone. There are people that want to help you. You have your parents, teacher, friends, so please don't carry that burden alone.
ကဲပါဆိုတော့ဒီ cyberbullying ကိုကြုံနေရတဲ့သူတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ပထမဆုံးနေတော့ကိုယ်အဲ့လိုမျိုး bully လုပ်နေတဲ့သူကို block လုပ်ပါပေါ့နော်ဝေနေပါပြီးလို့ရှိရင်ဒီ report တင်ပါပြီးလို့ရှိရင်ကျတော့ဒီ evidence တွေပေါ့နော်ကိုစုနိုင်သမျှအများကြီးစုပြီးတော့မှနံပါတ်၄ချက်ကအရေးကြီးဆုံးပေါ့နော်ကိုယုံကြည်ရတဲ့သူတွေစီကိုတွားပြီးတော့မှကိုညီတောင်းတာမျိုးလုပ်ပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းဒီဒီ Asian ဘက်မှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျတော့ကိုယ့်ရဲ့ပြဿနာတွေကိုမိဘတွေကိုပြောတာမျိုးနည်းနည်းလေးrisky ဖြစ်တယ်လို့ထင်ကြရပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းတယောက်တည်းမဖြေရှင်းပါနဲ့ပေါ့နော်ကိုတက်နိုင်သမျှအကူအညီယူပါလို့ဒီချင် sharing လုပ်ပေးတော့တာပါရှင်ကဲပါဆိုတော့နောက်ဆုံးမိကွန်းလေးပေါ့နော်နောက်ဆုံးမိကွန်းလေးကကြတော့ကျောင်းသားလူငယ်တွေအတွက်ဘေးကင်းပြီးတော့မှပေါ့နော်လုံခြုံမှုအပြည့်အဝပေးနိုင်တဲ့ပုံဝင်ချက်တစ်ခုဖန်တီးဖို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဘာတွေကနေစပြီးတော့မှလှုပ်ဆောင်တင်လဲရှင်
Okay. So I think like creating a safe environment isn't, first of all, I think the most important thing is it's not always about like protecting students from failure, because it's also about like creating an environment where they're allowed to fail, and where they can learn from it as well. So, sometimes like adults, they want to remove every obstacle from a student's path because they care about them. I mean, that intention, it's good, but the goal shouldn't be, to raise a student who never make mistakes. It should be to raise students who know how to recover from their mistakes. And, that means like providing guidance, but not controlling every decision. setting boundaries, without being like overly restrictive, and also just creating spaces where students feel comfortable enough to, ask for help. I mean, students, they're teenagers, they need boundaries, they need clear boundaries, they need expectations, they need support, but they also need room to grow independently, because if we try to control every decision that they make, they might never learn how to make good decisions on their own. And at the same time, giving them complete freedom without any guidance, it's not helpful either. I think I was also lucky enough to have um, parents that didn't really restrict me on things. They gave me the room to grow. They gave me the room to make mistakes, but also how to recover from them. I mean, with every teenager, I think if you tell them not to do something, they will 100% do it more. So I think it's important to recognize that as well, because when students know that they can make mistakes without being judged, then they become more confident in their decision making. They become more resilient, and they become more willing to take like healthy risk that help them grow. So I think what makes like a truly a safe learning environment is one that is built on both guidance, trust, and respect for the student, and the student in turn, respects you. Yeah.
ဆိုတော့ဒီကင်းပြီးတော့မှစိတ်လုံခြုံမှုရှိရဲ့ပတ်ဝန်းကျင်တစ်ခုဖန်တီးဖို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ဒီမိဘတွေပေါ့နော်မိဘဆရာတွေအနေနဲ့ကဒီကျောင်းသားရဲ့ decision အကုန်လုံးကိုတော့လိုက်ပြီးတော့မှ control လုပ်ပြီးချပေးနေရတဲ့ဆိုင်လို့ရှိရင်သူတို့ကိုယ်တိုင်ဆုံးဖြတ်ချက်ချနိုင်အောင်ပေါ့နော်ဘေးကနေပြီးတော့မှပံ့ပိုးပေးဖို့ကလည်းအရေးကြီးပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အမားတစ်ခါမှမလုပ်ဘူးတဲ့ကျောင်းသားတယောက်စားအမားလုပ်ပြီးတော့မှအဲ့အမားကနေပြီးတော့မှပြန်ပြီးတော့မှတင်ယူတဲ့ကျောင်းသားတယောက်ကိုမွေးထုတ်ပေးဖို့ကလည်းအရေးကြီးရပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ကိုကလည်းဘေးကနေပြီးတော့မှ support လုပ်ပေးဖို့လိုတယ်ဘေးကနေပြီးတော့မှသူတို့ကိုလည်းယုံကြည်ပေးဖို့လိုတယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးနောက်တစ်ခုကကျတော့အရေးကြီးဆုံးပေါ့နော်သူတို့ရဲ့ဆုံးဖြတ်ချက်တွေကိုလည်းလေးစားဖို့လိုတယ်သူတို့ကိုယ်တိုင်သူတို့ကလည်းကိုယ်ပိုင်စဉ်းစားဖို့အတွက်အခြေအနေကိုလည်းပေးဖို့လိုတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဖြစ်ပါဆိုတော့ဒီ message လေးကတော့တော်တော်လေးကိုကောင်းပါတယ်ရှင်ခဲ့ပါဆိုတော့အခုဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော် Learner Pod episode 16လေးကအဆုံးသက်ကိုရောက်ရှိလာခဲ့ပါပြီဒီနေ့ episode မှာကျောင်းသားတွေကြုံတွေ့နေရတဲ့ risk တွေအပြင်အဲ့ဒီ risk တွေကိုဘယ်လိုမျိုးကျော်လွှားမလဲဆိုတဲ့ဗဟုသုတတွေကိုပါတခြားလေး sharing လုပ်ပေးခဲ့တဲ့ guest speaker teacher sharing ကိုလည်းဒီနေ့လည်းမိသားစုကိုစားကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ရှိကြပေးကြလို့ပါတယ်ရှင်ဆိုတော့နောက်ထောင်ပေးခဲ့ကြတဲ့ Unilearn ဆေးတွေအတွက်လည်းဒီဆွေးနွေးချက်လေးတွေကအများကြီးထောက်ကူဖြစ်မယ်လို့မျှော်လင့်ပါတယ် Unilearn ကနေပြီးတော့လူငယ်တွေအတွက်အကျိုးရှိစေမယ့်အကြောင်းအရာတွေကိုအပတ်စဉ်တင်ဆက်ပေးနေအောင်မှာဖြစ်လို့နောက်လာမယ့် episode တွေမှာလည်းပြန်လည်ဆုံတွေ့ကြပါမယ်ရှင် See you Unilearners bye bye